When Chip Miller found his race cars, the West Coast guys, myself included, were kind of leading edge of improving race cars because of Steve Earle and Monterey Historic Races that started in the early 70s. Well, when Chip got into the hobby heavy, he started this annual event in 1998, and every 5 years thereafter, he said he wanted to host another one, and this will be the fourth such event coming up this August.
That was the end. Now look at me. Anyway, I was forever wanted to be a racer, whatever it took, and that was the car that did it. And there's a photo from SCCA driver school at Watkins Glen in 1964. You'll notice that there's a couple of straight pipes sitting out under the back of that car. The exhaust system where it goes around the spare tire carrier was cut in flange, so we could put the mufflers, take the mufflers off and put those two straight pipes on. And that car, as it sits there in the paddock at Watkins Glen, was property of Chevrolet Motor Division. My father, unbeknownst, when I decided I wanted to be a race driver after seeing that Meadowdale race, my brother and I got to discussing it, and he said, well, how are we going to race? We didn't have a car. And I said, well, maybe we can talk Dad into getting a Corvette for a company car. So Dad, as I mentioned yesterday and other places, he made a couple of big mistakes. One, he agreed. An even bigger mistake, he let us fill out the order blank. And so that's a fuel-injected coupe, heavy-duty brakes, heavy-duty transmission, heavy-duty axle, heater delete, aluminum wheels. So the order went in, and I was working at Chevrolet Sales Promotion. Phone rang one morning, and it was Zora Duntov on the phone. I can't do his accent, but something like, Tony, this is Zora Duntov, like getting a call from God. And he said, your father has ordered a heavy-duty Corvette. Who's going to drive it? I said, he is? And I wish I could have seen Zora at that point. Zora's probably like, oh, Jesus. So he asked me the same question again, and I said, I'm going to drive it. He said, what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm going to take it to Watkins Glen for SCCA driver school. He said, that's all I wanted to know. So the car was delivered with a set of Goodyear Blue Streak race tires in it that had been freshly scrubbed in. And I'll never be able to verify it, but I'm pretty sure that the motor in the car was a product of the Chevrolet motor room. So, because I ruled Woodward Avenue for several months as we were getting ready for driver school. And the thing is that in order to prepare the car properly, you have to basically gut it. So we took the carpeting out and did all that stuff and went to driver school successfully. And the short story is the car, he had it, was going to sell it. He wasn't going to keep it. So it had to go back to Chevrolet and then be delivered. And well, anyway, he called me one day and said the car's got to go back to 440 Burroughs, which is where the executive Chevrolet garage was. And all we could do was take the carpeting, the bumpers, the spare tire, the glove box. We just threw all the stuff in the car. And it went back, and then I got the phone call. And he said, when that car comes back to the house, don't touch it. Yes, sir. So the good news was he didn't kill me. But I think if he had been within arm's reach, I may not be here today. But anyway. So he had a talk with me, and he said, I can see where this is headed, and if that's the direction you want to go, that's fine with me. He said, but I can't help you financially, so I'm going to give you a car, and if you make it so that it's not drivable, you're going to have to walk or take the bus. And there is the car, the 65 Corvair 500, which I raced for 2 years. I qualified to go to the runoffs in Riverside in '66, and I couldn't afford to go. And then I had to talk with my brother, Pete, and Pete said, if I keep doing this, you got to get a sponsor. So I put a put a proposal together, and I started shopping it around, and one of the persons was Hanley Dawson Chevrolet, Hanley Jr., and I had a meeting with him, and I gave him my little spiel, and he had my proposal, and I figured, well, the answer was going to be no, so I'm picking my papers up, getting ready to leave, and he says, I think I'd like to do that. So the rest is history. He ordered the 67 L88, RPO number 1.
That was the first one made.
First one built, and he got a trailer and got us a Chevrolet wagon to tow it with, and expense money, and off we went. And we qualified for the runoffs at Daytona, and there was a huge dust up on the first lap, and Cobras from all areas of the country went spinning off into the weeds, and Dick Smith's Cobra survived, and I survived, and I finished second to him, and we started off running the rest of, we decided that, we wanted to get another car, so we tried to get a 68 L88, and Hanley Dawson, they couldn't get one, so we talked to Ernie Callard and some other people at Chevrolet, and I said, well, we need to put this car together for the 24-hour. And so basically we had, we paid for the stuff, but we had carte blanche at Chevrolet Otterburn Warehouse, which was up near Flint, and we beat a path back and forth to that. They got us a production body and frame, and then we basically, you have no idea. Well, yeah, you do. I'm among friends. How many pieces are in a car, even when you throw half of it away and make a race car. So we worked really hard over the few months we had to get this car ready, and we had a deal with Don Yanko for the Sunray DX team, and we ran Daytona and Sebring. And I don't know if you can see that, but I'm wearing the latest fireproof golf gloves there. Anyway, really thin leather, but we don't want to talk about that. But at any rate, the 67 car, the coupe, with Dave Morgan and Jerry Brandt won the GT class, and Don Yanko and Peter Revson, and myself and Jerry Thompson, we finished way back because we broke everything you could break on the chassis, but still managed to finish. The good news is that
Are those
Zora...
cars still around today?
Pardon?
Are those cars still around today?
Let's see. Yes. The short answer is yes. The number 30 car is going to be inducted in the Great Hall this afternoon. That's number 12, the Owens Corning Fiberglass, the 68 car. This car is already in the Great Hall, and you can see that after Sebring, we painted the cars. My favorite color is black with a blue stinger, and so we ran SCCA Nationals that season, and Hanley let me know that he was going to have to get out of the sponsorship business, and so I put another proposal together. That's one of my favorite shots. That's at Elkhart Lake. And anyway, I was having dinner with my folks at their club, and Ed Cole and his wife Dolly walked in, and she asked me how I was doing with my racing. I said, well, we're doing okay. I said, we're looking for a new sponsor. And she said, do you have a proposal? And I said, yes. She said, get me a copy of it, and I did. And the next week she was going to New York with Ed. He was going to the board meeting, and I'm not sure what Dolly had planned, but she had a friend, Loris Norstad, who was a retired SAC general, who was executive vice president at Owens Corning. And if you've ever seen Dolly, tall, blue-eyed Texan blonde. So she went into Loris's office, and I wish I could have been a fly on the wall, but I think she probably said something like, Loris, I think you should help these boys. And I'm sitting at my desk at Rockwell Standard the next week, and I got a call from Alan Caravan from Toledo, which is their headquarters, and he said, we have your proposal, we'd like to talk. And we made a deal, and the rest is history. We got, in the deal, we got one of the world's great PR men, Roger Halladay, who, it would take all day for me to tell you how how good and what he did. But basically we had a press kit for every race. We had interviews with radio, TV, newspaper people everywhere we went. And so the first race we did for them was Mid-Ohio in August. We finished, I won the race. And then somewhere along the season we decided we were going to run one car in B production, so we changed motors in the 67 and Jerry started competing in B. We both earned a trip to Riverside in November for the runoffs, and I finished second after us squandering a 22-second lead with yellow flags. Pete Consiglio won the race in his Cobra. Jerry also finished second in B production to Alan Barker, who we loved dearly then and still love now. And there's a shot, that's Bill Mitchell, who was the VP of styling at GM and an around the block neighbor of ours. I'm not sure, Jim, is that Pedro Rodriguez over my shoulder?
I think so.
It kind of looks like
Yeah.
it. Anyway, I think this shot was made, I think, in '69.
He was, there's a fun story with the 66 car, how he got the ride with Ferrari
Yeah,
at the last minute.
yeah.
And then Harold Williams got that car. And
Yeah.
the owner of that car sits in a room right here, so we could have some more.
If you see that we had some driver suits that were made out of what they called beta cloth. That was actually fiberglass, woven fiberglass. And similar to the suits that the astronauts wore on the moon shots. And anyway, so we started out in '69. We sold the '67 car. I think Doug Hooper was driving it
Right, came to California.
in '69, and Jerry drove the car that's in the Great Hall right now is the number 12 car. That's number 67, and the '69 car is number 66. And that race was not successful. We had a blown tire in my car, and it caught fire. Got retired. We finally finished one of the cars at Sebring in '69, and then we went to they're the guys. I think we had a rear end. We had issues, but we recovered and we won
Gee,
the.
that's been fun too.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's the.
Wheaties and beer.
We had beers and Wheaties, and Wheaties did a commercial. That's Randy Wittine holding the Wheaties box. He did all our graphics and paint and body work, and he was an employee at GM Design Staff his entire career. And anyway, he did the designs, which popped so well. I mean, you could see the cars on the track anywhere from wherever you were. But he always was changing things. And so our competitors at one point thought we had 6 or 7 cars, right, Peggy? But anyway, we only had 2 cars. So that's Gib Hufstetter on the right, and he was Zora Duntos, one of Zora's right-hand man. And Jerry on the left, and why am I having brain fade here? Yeah, Dick Lang, oh my God. So, God rest his soul. But anyway, Dick and I won the GT class at the Glen 6 Hour, finished 7th overall, got our picture in the New York Times sport page. They never cover racing, I don't know.
Right.
There's the car on the track. Great, it was a great weekend. The only negative part of the weekend was Jerry lost control of the number 15 car and basically wrote it off. We had to replace the frame, and the crowd stole some of the bodywork off the car while it was lying in ruins. And that's Billy Morrison from Chicago. He was driving with Jerry, so unfortunately he never got a chance to drive in the race.
You didn't buy any frames or anything for weekend maintenance, did you?
When we finished the 24-hour, it's Lord Fauntleroy, who looked a lot like me, said, look, we beat the crap out of this, we're putting new frames under it. And then all the classic Corvette guys would throw their hats on the ground and jump up and down and say, you did what? And, well, yeah, it was a race car. So, but anyway.
And you drove in the rain?
Oh, I'd love to drive in the rain. I mean, it's crazy. But this is Meadowdale in May of '69, and this is, that's about the way we finished. Ron Weaver, you can see, number 10. Basically, we finished that close together after a 30-minute national. And it was only just one part of the course, 1.1 mile. Anyway, and that's a Mid-Ohio shot. But that May race at Meadowdale started the streak, we call it. And from May of '69 to November of '70, we won 22 straight events, finished 1, 2, and 14 of them. And that included SCCA National Championships, GT wins at Daytona twice, Sebring and Watkins Glen, and as well as national wins. And we didn't think about it a lot at the time, but about halfway through it, our PR guy, Roger Holliday, reminded us of what we were doing, and we started to get a little nervous and jerky, but fortunately we concentrated. And our crew guys were mostly volunteers. Art Jerome is on the right, who is no longer with us, but he was getting paid, but the rest of the guys were all volunteers, and they basically did it because
The love of the sport.
a little out of, I mean, they all love the sport, and so we had a big crew. You saw that shot from Daytona running the 24-hour, but there were Jerry guys and there were Tony guys. Of course, we never discussed this publicly, but there's some great stories that go with that. But at any rate, that's after Jerry won the national championship in the 7 car. Art Jerome and I went up to Aiken, South Carolina, to the Owens Corning. We did appearances at Owens Corning plants all over the country, and this one we displayed the cars and the people got to see them. We started them up so they could hear them, and we spent the day there. And it was really they marketed this program to their employees, but mostly, especially to their customers, and they really made a mark. When you can see Randy's design on the side of the trailer, and obviously the race cars, I mean, it was spectacular, it really was. And then we had all the apparel to go with it. No, I don't know who that girl is. I thought it was Ron McConkey's girlfriend, and he told me she wasn't his girlfriend, so I don't know who she is. But she appears in a lot of the pictures there at the runhouse at Daytona. So my favorite expression for the last 10, 15 years is, I've never seen that woman before in my life. In fact, at the Corvette World Challenge at Elkhart Lake 3 years ago, when I was privileged to drive the '67 L88 again, I said to the guys, I said, you know, maybe we ought to get a banner and hang it over the garage that says, I never saw that woman before in my life. And then I finally grew up a notch, and I said, you know, that's probably not a good idea. So there's nothing worse than getting, that's the first page of the streak.
The '69 record.
That's 69. And, oh, that's 70 at the 24-hour.
There she is again.
Same girl.
Dick Lang, Dick Lang, and John Mailer is next to Jerry, second from the right. And John, he was amazing, from Iowa. And Raleigh Aiken from Iowa, Jerry Thompson from Iowa. We call it the Iowa Mafia. But John was, you know, he had movie star good looks, and so the girls all voted, when they all walked by our pits, I think they probably voted him as most likely to succeed, or that sort of thing. And Jerry and John won the GT class in '70, and the 24-hour finished 6th overall. And there's Dick Lang and me. We had problems. We had a drive shaft in the middle of the night, which I got to go out and change in the infield. There we are at Sebring. I'm not sure what I'm telling him. He's probably thinking, I already know that. But anyway, but we won the GT class. This is at Sebring in 1970, finished 10th overall, and that was, they like to say that was one of the more spectacular races ever, because Mario Andretti and Peter Revson slugged it out to the last minute, and that's in the winner's circle, Dick and myself, and that chick on the hood looks a lot like my wife, so I always kid her about the pants she's wearing, but not too, and there's the other part of the streak. We were defeated by John Greenwood at the runoffs at Road Atlanta in 1970. I don't like to talk about that much because when the race started, I was third, and I felt that I was running faster than John or Jerry. And I'm thinking, all right, how am I going to get around these guys so I can get away? And then my engine quit at the start of the second lap or third lap. And you know, I ran my hand down the exposed fuse block and it popped, and I took the ignition fuse out and squeezed the little tabs back together, and it fired right up, and then I drove like a maniac, but finished third, so that's the way it goes. And we, in our spare time in 1970, while we were in the second year of the streak, we prepared 2 Trans Am Camaros and ran 10 Trans Am races. Lots of all time. I call this the grind and the grit of long distance racing. This is Sebring 71. I'm not happy. I hit a 12-inch traffic cone in turn 1, not thinking that it would do much damage to the car, but if you're going 100 and some miles an hour, you can see what happens. And then we bought a trailer from Dan Gurney, so we had a new trailer, and we had a new sponsor, and we got some Mustangs. Oops! And we ran the Mustangs in the Trans Am in 71. We bought the cars from Bud Moore, but they're ex-factory Mustangs, and they were amazing.
Marietta, Ohio Corvette enthusiast, and got the bug in because I had Corvettes. I had the bug to start racing. And I had a very good friend, neighbor, Bob Johnson, better known now as Marietta Bob Johnson. And we decided one day to take my 66 coupe, it was a 427, which I ordered with all the heavy-duty things I could buy at that time, and turn it into a race car. And I never built a race car, and believe it or not, at that time, Bob never had a license. So we had a lot to learn. We did it strictly as rank amateurs, and first year we had, with this car, we ended up with 7 A production wins, and we had an invitation to the Daytona Runoffs. Tony was in the runoffs at that time, and unfortunately we did have a problem with the car, but we were the 4th fastest Corvette at that time, and we thought after the race was over, boy, we did everything we wanted to do. We hit Daytona and met a lot of good people, and we would quit. And I met, first I have to go back, I had a lot of help from a fellow by the name of Bill Mayberry, better known as Murph. Murph was Roger Penske's mechanic and also George Winterstein's mechanic. And we became very good friends. In fact, we were friends until he died in 1996. But because of that, I think I had a visit from someone from Corvette and asked me if I was going to continue, and I said no, and he said, why? I said, I took a look at Tony's car, and I don't think I want to continue because I don't have all the things in my car that he had. And
What things?
You know what things.
No, I don't know what things.
You know. But anyhow, so gave me his card, and at the same time in Marietta we were trying to build a laboratory equipment business, and it was taking a lot of my time. But I kind of got the bug again, and I gave a call to this gentleman at Corvette, and I ended up with a brand new L88, which I promised to take to Watkins Glen. And he said, who was going to drive? And I said, Bob Johnson and Bob Johnson. And he said, wait a minute. He said, I know you know Bob and you're friends of Bob Johnson, Marietta. What's the other Bob Johnson? I said, that's the Bob Johnson who drove for Shelby, he drove for Penske, he drove for Jim Hall. He said, how did you get him? I said, nothing, we're just friends. And this was not a paid deal or anything else, we're just friends. And I said, would you like to drive with Bob at the 6 hours at Watkins Glen? And he said, oh, that'd be fun, let's do it. Well, again, that was my first FIA race, and I was pretty naive.
What year was that?
Pardon?
What year was that?
68.
68.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went to the track early in the week, and I didn't have a tire contract, I didn't have a fueling rig. I was kind of real naive. I did have all the good stuff on the car that came from Chevrolet. And on top of that, I had to wait until the Bob Johnson showed up. And I told Bob what happened. He said, let's go back downtown. That's where he had to go back then, to register. And he said, let's take the car out of your name and put it in my name, which we did. And he came back up, and all of a sudden, we had a contract with Firestone, and we had Grady Davis from Gulf Oil gave us a fueling rig and some other goodies, and lo and behold, we ended up 11th overall, first in GT plus 2,000. So that was our first FIA race and very successful. We went on that year to, as much as we could, we took the car out and ran quite a few A production races, but at the same time, again, business, I just didn't know if I wanted to continue or not. And finally in '69, I got the urge again and made a call to Chevrolet and ended up with a '69 L88. Again, with, I know exactly what it came with it, 1,800 pounds of material came with it. And I built the car, this car, and Bob, along with Jim Greendyke, we entered Daytona, and at the end of 20 hours, we were in good shape with this car, but unfortunately, we had an engine failure. We went to Sebring with the car that same year. Tony won, he was 10th overall, we were 11th overall, and second in GT. At that time, our business was growing, and I felt I couldn't continue. So I sold the car to V.V. Cook, and I turned it over into a B production car for Alan Barker. And that's where the car is today. It's on the West Coast, owned by Larry Bowman. In the meantime, I got a call from a person everybody knows, John Greenwood, and John called and he said that you're not going to race anymore. I said, no, business is taking all my time. And he said, how about give me a hand if you can on certain weekends? Well, believe it or not, I ended up crewing for John for over 15 races, including 1973 Le Mans. And in fact, that's me right there. I just changed brakes. The Bob right there is the Bob Johnson. He actually ran the pits for Greenwood in quite a few races, and including Le Mans. And but that's me there there's John and Alan Barker and myself. But anyhow, we had a lot of experiences. The experience I'd like to tell you about in 1973 was not a good one, but it was certainly interesting. We took two cars to Le Mans for the 24-hour, and number 68, which ended up as number 49, which Chuck Ungren has in his collection right now. And the other car was we had number 29. And that car was going to be driven by John and Bob Johnson. Don Yenko, Ron Grable, and Jimmy Greendyke, they were going to drive the number 68 car. We went out and the cars qualified. The 29 car ran a 419 at Le Mans. Le Mans is, incidentally, it's still about the same length. It's 8.45 miles nominally. Now, back then, the Le Mans, the Mulsanne Straight was straight. Today, they have two kinks in it. And they have, one is called Perez and the other is called the Michelin Kink Chicane, actually. But anyhow, we didn't have that. Now, the cars turn roughly 212, 213 miles an hour doing a straight. John was always the kind of guy that he just, as Tony knew, he'd keep it to the floor. And my experience with John was that if he kept it to the floor, he was probably hard to beat if the engine stayed. But we had tremendous engine failures. John liked to build his own engine. And I was pretty mouthy, and I always wondered what he thought about me. And a couple of years ago, I got a tremendous letter from him, and I still cherish it, telling me that he thanked me for everything, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyhow, we decided, we got back, and all of a sudden John wanted to put a longer gear in the 68 car, so he asked Don Yenko to take it out on the street. and just kind of break it in because it was brand new. And Don went out on the street, and there's a lot of stories about what happened, but to cut it short, some Frenchman kind of looked at it, couldn't believe it was on the street, went like that and took the front end of the car off.
Oh, jeez.
So we got it back to the shop, and Andre Greger, who raced at Le Mans many years, Corvettes, he sent people down to help us, and we worked all night and had the car completely ready to go for the race. And we didn't know it, but the powers that be at Le Mans, they turned around and canceled the car out. It was protested by Goodrich because we were sponsored by Goodrich, but with no avail. They put another car in driven by two Frenchmen, and so 68 never ran the race.
Why did they cancel? Why did they
They
just?
said they read it in the newspaper and they thought it was crashed, so they immediately put the alternate car in, and that's what happened. But anyhow, we turned around and we had one car, so Bob and Greenwood were going to race the car. That unfortunately, with the Goodrich tires back then, it seemed like just about every other lap we had to change tires. We were changing tires with the car, and if the car had an accident, I was the one that was designated to repair the car. I had an apron with a lock wire pliers, lock wire tape, and also what we call a Charlotte drill, with hammer and ice pick, you know, for the fiberglass. And John came in with a front hanging, and so immediately they jacked it, and I started repairing it. I had all the holes punched, I had the lock wire, the front up again, and I was taping it, and someone decided to go to change the back tires, and they dropped the car on me. So I ended up in the Le Mans hospital. By the time I got back, I had a leg that looked like a roast beef that was in the oven for about a half an hour. But by the time I got back, the car only lasted 350 miles roughly, and it was out, so that was the end of the two-car 1973 experience. From then on, I did crew for a lot of people. I crewed 2 times only for the 57 Rebel car that's out here. I was the gas man. That's me on the gas there. I crewed for, if I can mention it, for Peter Gregg for Porsche. He called every time he came to Mid-Ohio. He wanted a tire changer, so he would call me. I also helped, because Murph helped me at every race. He was at every race I raced, and became friends. Every time he would go somewhere, he would call and ask if I could go. And I crewed with Dickie Smothers and George Winterstein in Formula 5000. And then Murph went on with Carl Hogan, with David Hobbs, Formula 5000. I crewed on that car. So I still had a completely different experience than Tony as a driver, but I'm still an enthusiast. I'm on my second Z06. I have a Z06. And my tongue's hanging out to come up here and look at a new Z06 with my friend David here.
See,
So,
one thing I found
Yes,
in
sir.
common with both of you guys, was Gib Hofstad. So I had to put this in, because he was the engineer that always showed up in the rain suit with the book bags that were bulging, school book bags, and it was, who is this guy in the pits? Nobody knew. He had all the spare parts from the guys to help you out.
oh yeah. Well,
But Gib
This
is
is-
a great guy and a great friend.
he's very modest. I just met, that's Gib Hofstadter. Well, this is the crew here, and this is Gib Hofstadter. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the 2 L88s. Gib is a very, very modest guy. I think you'll admit that, won't you?
Very
He
much.
doesn't like to be told that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have raced. And in fact, at the NCRS meeting at Napoleon, Ohio on the 8th of November last year, it's the first time I saw Gib for a long time. And he's still that way. Oh, don't say that.
Yeah.
But it's true, if it wasn't for him, I would not have had those 2 L88s. And it's not the two LE8s, as Tony will tell you, it's all the stuff that comes with them.
And the Friendship,
All the homologated parts,
there's a great picture of Friendship right there.
because
on the
the
game.
car is taken apart completely and put back together, and it's put back together with not what came with the L88, so made a different car out of it. This, you had that last one, that's, I cherish that picture because there is Bob Johnson, who's no longer with us, Doug Hoover's no longer with us, Dick Goldstrand, myself, and Tony. But we're still there, Tony.
Where was that?
That was at, wasn't
Carlisle?
that
Carlisle?
Carlisle, right?
Yeah, it was
Oh, yeah,
Carlisle.
yeah,
I
that's,
think in '04.
that was
Or
only
maybe
nine,
09,
actually.
no, yeah, it was '04.
Yeah. This will be the first time I'll go to Carlisle for the Racers Reunion without Bob,
Oh, boy.
because I've been to every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pete.
Say,
Well, should I say no, nothing? I mean, it's been
no,
a
no,
long
no,
time.
man.
And I should have addressed the question to both.
Well, basically, but the whole suspension of the car was taken off and everything else was replaced. And they all had Chevrolet part numbers. And so that was, if you look at,
You may have seen that one slide with the
Well, we had
shipping label.
springs, there were
We
different
had-
springs,
we had
A lot of
springs,
stuff
we
that
had
comes with
rotors,
sway bars.
sway bars, we had brakes.
Well, I don't know
Brake
about
pads. Brake
brakes,
pads.
we chased brakes, well, we chased brakes
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Control arms, did they ever change the control arms?
We changed them on our cars,
Yes.
for tire clearance. We
They-
caved them in and then put a blister on the back that was Heliarc down. It was still as strong.
But no
I remember our
no
early-
factory parts though.
Pardon?
No factory parts.
Those weren't factory, no, for tire clearance, but for the long distance races, we ran a wider track, and so we had the flares. Randy modeled the flares, and they got shipped to various dealers just in time, in the nick of time. And the beautiful thing was, the homologation papers
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
were done. And I remember when we built a car for a friend of mine who flew for Pan Am and was based in Germany. And we built this car for him. This would be 70, 71, the winter of. And he took it to Germany and he pounded the Porsches into the ground. And the factory went nuts. And they were gonna protest him and throw him out, and he showed him the homologation papers, and so we're indirectly responsible for Porsche turning into the monster that it turned into. Because they must beat these Corvettes, and then all of a sudden, Peter Gregg and Hurley Haywood were no longer the punching bags that they
Yeah.
were for the first couple of years.
I still have the original old paperwork for my cars. Kevin McKay found my 68 and restored it. It's exactly the way it was. Received the American Heritage Award. The 66 also was refound by Kevin and restored. It has the American Heritage Award. But to go back a minute, I still have all the FIA papers and the homologation papers, and they're very interesting, obviously. And there's a story, I'll just tell you a cute story that I've heard, and I don't know if it's legitimate, maybe you heard it too, Tony. But back then, Chevrolet was not in racing. And they tell me that Zora was sent upstairs to ask they were going to ask him the question, how did you get this, who authorized this car to get homologated? Am I right, Tony?
Something
And he
like
went
that.
he went upstairs and he said, according to somebody from Chevrolet, told me that his answer was he honored a request from the FIA and got away with it. So that's the story I heard. But obviously they weren't in racing back then, and here we are with complete homologation papers for the Corvette. So I think I have two nice pieces of history because I had two. Do you ever keep yours?
I think I have the Chevrolet homologation papers, I forget which year.
I
And
have two
also,
sets.
I also have one for the Mustang of all
I do
things.
really. I have both the 68 and 69 papers and the original paperwork. I want someone to go buy the car that Larry Bowman has and turn it back to the L88 GT car. And I have paperwork, I got all I kept all the free invoices from Chevrolet, I kept all
The
that
shippers,
paperwork.
got all the shippers,
I have everything.
yeah.
And I have all the part numbers that they gave me. I've got the original window sticker. If anybody wants to see my window stickers for both cars, I have them right here. And I have the original invoice from the dealer. I have everything for that car, original registration. And I said, because I'm 81 years old, I would like to see it restored. And I said, if anybody takes it back and restored it, everything I have, including homologation paper and everything else, it's free. It goes back. I'm going to give it away.
I saved nothing.
Pardon?
I saved
You
nothing.
saved nothing.
I've got a few fragments
Didn't you
here.
say that I saved the trophy, my second place trophy?
You know what I have? I have, when we built the two Trans Am Camaros, I have the shipper from Norwood, Ohio, Cincinnati, and I have the body plate numbers, and it says prime only, and the two bare bodies that we built the Trans Am cars out of. It's like, how the hell did I ever save that? It just was an accident. So,
Tony, are either of those Camaros or the Mustang, are they out there?
yes, the two Mustangs are out there. One's in Vancouver. The other one, and it's a number 15 Parnelli car now. I got a chance to sit in it a couple of years ago with Parnelli standing outside, but because of the shadow, you can only see Parnelli. You can't see me. And the other one has been repainted, restored to 1969 version, black and white and red, or red and black and white stripes, whatever. And it was the car that Peter Revson drove. And the Camaros, one of them has been fully restored. It's in Sonoma. And I'm Randy Peterson, I think.
Yeah.
Randy?
Yeah.
He owns it. When I was out there last year, we had corresponded, and he said, "No, I'm having trouble identifying a decal on the back of the car." Well, I thought he meant the tail panel. We didn't have any decals back there. Well, what he was referring to was the rear quarters. So when I got introduced to him when I was out there, so we talked, and then I suddenly realized what he was talking about, and so I said, "Well, it's the Lampert Firestone decal," and so I tried to find, we had some that we had recreated from an original. Some of us were focused and the rest of us we all loved it, what we were doing. And I remember talking with Jerry when we got inducted, and he says, "How the hell did we do all that stuff?" I said, "Well, we wanted to go racing, and that's what you had to do to go." So, but I wouldn't change anything, except maybe have more sponsors as we get farther into it. But you're only as good as your last concert. So anyway.
They're obviously very good.
My story on that. I was not a driver. My story is about what happens when you become a real Corvette enthusiast. I went out and bought a 1963 split window, sold in the showroom, took it home, Daytona blue, beautiful, red inside. It was 300 horse. And I met a friend in Marietta, Bob Johnson, and Bob had a Sunbeam Tiger and an XKE. And we became very good friends from the start. So we used to go to all kinds of races, etc. And I said, "Boy, this thing's only 300 horse." So I went out and ordered a 427 66 coupe. And like Tony, I picked every high option there was on the list. Not planning to race it. And Bob and I went to a lot of races, all kinds of races, Formula One, distance races, etc. And finally one day, I don't know, out of nowhere, I said, "Bob, I think we could do as good as some of these guys at SCCA." I said, how about I'll prep the car for racing and you drive it? Well, on the way home after we were in Mid-Ohio, on the way home, I looked at him and I said, that was a dumb statement. I said, I never built a race car and you don't have a license. So anyhow, I went out and got the regulations from SCCA. Bob went to school in a Spitfire, borrowed it, and he got his license. And lo and behold, we took the car to Cumberland to our first SCCA race, and Bob won the race. The only problem was that every time he came back to come in to get the checkered flag, he kept going by. And he kept going by, and he kept waving and waving. I thought, boy, he's really taking this seriously. But what happened, he started chunking it back in first gear, and he stopped, and he said, I said, what's wrong? He said, I don't have any brakes. I said, no wonder you were so fast. But anyhow, at that time, it really started a friendship. Along with the Penske truck at that time was a guy by the name of Bill Mayberry, better known as Murph. And Murph worked for Roger Penske and George Winterstein. And we became lifelong friends until he died in 1996. But he came over and he said, he looked over the car and he said, boy, you guys need help. So he went back to the shop and sent me a lot of stuff, a lot of things he thought of we needed. We went on with that car, and we won the first race at Cumberland. We went on with that car, and Bob had 7 A production wins, and we went on to Daytona for the runoffs at Daytona, and we were very pleased to be there, even though we were the 4th fastest Corvette, 4th in line. Tony was 2nd overall, we were 7th. The Cobras were in between. But we thought that was great. That was going to be the end of it. Murph was with us, and I said, that's it. We did Daytona. I was trying to build a laboratory equipment business in Marietta, and I said, I'm not going to do it. So what happened, a gentleman came up from Corvette Chevrolet, and he said, you're going to continue. And I don't know if Tony liked it or not, but what I said was, no, I'm not going to continue. I was looking under Tony's car, looking around it, and I said, I'm not going to try to compete with that. Well, I got the gentleman's card, and he said, look, if you want to continue, give me a call, I'll get you the right stuff. So I thought about it for a while, and finally Bob and I talked about it, and I said, Watkins Glen's 6 hours coming up in July. I said, maybe this guy can get us a real good car. So I called, and I got my first L88 with all the good stuff that came with it from Chevrolet. We built the car, and this gentleman asked me who was going to drive, and I said, Bob Johnson and Bob Johnson. He said, well, what do you mean by that? What's Bob Johnson? And I said, well, Marietta Bob, my friend, but we have another friend out of Columbus, Bob Johnson. He's the Bob Johnson? I said, yeah. Bob that drove for Shelby, he drove for Cobra. He drove the Cobras, he drove for Penske in the long-distance races in the Camaro, and he drove for Chaparral. He also started, incidentally, in his own Corvette.
Yeah, in the 60s.
Yeah, 1960. And then he had his own Cobra. And we just became good friends. That's how it happened. And we decided to go to Watkins Glen for the 6 hour. And I took the car there early. And boy, was I naive. I had all the right paperwork from Chevrolet provided the FIA homologation papers, etc. And boy, I thought I had everything in line. Then I got there and I started wearing it. I didn't have a tire contract. I didn't have a fuel rig. I figured, boy, am I in trouble now. Well, Columbus Bob showed up. He said, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go back downtown and put the car in my name. So we went down and put down Bob as entering the car. Came back to the track. Half an hour later, he says, get all your wheels down to Firestone. We'll get all the tires in Firestone. He said, we got a rig from Grady Davis from Gulf Oil. He said, no problem. And that's the way Bob was. I don't know if you all knew him, but he was something else. So anyhow, it was a 6 hour race. We were 11th overall, first GT plus 2,000. That first 6 hour race, and we were very pleased.
What year was that?
Pardon?
What year?
1968.
68.
Yep. And we went on to turn it over as a production car and ran as many races as we could. Again, business was primary in my mind. And I sold the car to Jim Greendyke, and Jim ran it in Central Division. Then I started thinking about it and kind of missed it. And I called again, and the same fellow at Corvette, and they said, I want to get a car, I want to run the 24-hour and 12-hour races. And so I got my second L88 with all the stuff. In fact, that car came in 1,800 pounds of stuff to rebuild the car, which we talked about, Tony and I talked about it today and many times before. But we entered the 24-hour race. At the end of 20 hours, we were doing very well, and the car broke, the engine broke. So unfortunately, we didn't finish. We had good top speed in that. We had trap speeds at 189 roughly recorded, all except the engine braking. So that's my wife and I with Zora at Daytona. We took the car to Sebring that year, and we had both Bobs and Jimmy Greendyke as the drivers, and we ended up 11th overall, second in class. Tony beat us. He was 10th overall, first in class. And we thought that was very successful. And at that point, business was going good, thank goodness, and we were growing. And I decided to stop racing. Shortly after that, I got a call from John Greenwood, and John said, would you have any time on weekends to give me a hand crewing? He said, after all, you build cars, and if I have any problems, you can help me with them at the races. And I said I would. And that lasted, believe it or not, over 15 races. The most memorable race I like to talk about, and Jim asked me to talk about, is 1973 at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I guess you've all followed the Le Mans. The track hasn't changed very much at Le Mans. It's roughly 8.5 miles long. The Mulsanne Straight was straight back then. It has two kinks right now, the Perez Straight chicane and the Mitch chicane. But back then it was straight. And we turned we turned 419 laps with number 29, which was the car that Bob Johnson and Greenwood drove, and the Enco Ron Grable, Jim Greendyke car was running at 430. Both cars did qualify at that time, but we went back to the garage. We had a rental garage in Orneige, a Shell station. We went back, and John Greendyke said that we want to put a different diff in that 68 car. And it was brand new. We put it in, and he said, Yenko, why don't you take it out on the road and break it in? There's two stories about what happened. I saw them leave to go on the road. Of course, I didn't see what happened, but no matter what happened, a Frenchman took the front end of the car off, right to the radiator. And it wasn't Don's fault. The worst thing about it, Don had his daughter in the front seat. She had some stitches, problems. She had to go to the hospital. But we worked all night, and Andre Carrera, who ran Corvettes at Le Mans many years, he sent down people from his crew, which was real neat, to help us out. And we got the car completely ready to go, taking it out to the track. We found out that they disqualified us. Fathers-to-be read in the paper that the car was crashed, and they entered another car driven by two Frenchmen in its place. Goodrich tried to protest, and the protest it was awful, because it ended up that we could take the car down to the track, and if somebody dropped out, we could put the car in. But the problem was no one dropped out. If we protested, the car couldn't even be taken down to the track. We had to wait till the protest. So we thought, well, somebody might drop out. The best thing to do is to drop the protest and take the car. Well, so that car didn't run. The 29 car ran with Bob and John, and unfortunately, we had many stops with that car because the Goodrich tires were new to that track and the speeds. They were turning 212 roughly down the Mulsanne Straight. Trap speeds came back always around 211, 213, and the tires didn't last very long. So finally, John was coming in the pits, and the front was dragging, and I was the guy, if it was damaged, I was the guy to fix it. Well, I had an apron, and I had lock wire pliers, lock wire tape, and a Charlotte drill, we called it, a hammer and an ice pick, put holes in the fiberglass to lock wire. They jacked the car up, took the front wheels off, and I was kind of under the car, and all of a sudden somebody decided to drop the car and change the back wheels while I was working on it. Well, the car was dropped on me and I ended up in the hospital. So by the time I got back, it was a leg problem. And when I got back, the car only ran about 350 miles and it blew up. So that was really a disaster for John Greenwood Racing. But it was a real experience to be there, and I certainly enjoyed it. After that, I crewed for the 57 car on 2 races as a gas man, and that's me there on gas.
Which is the car that's here today?
I'm sorry?
That's the car
That's out there, yes,
today?
that's out here. Because Bob Johnson drove the car, Columbus Bob is right there, and he actually directed the pits to a lot of races. And Marietta Bob was a driver with Dave Hines. I also was asked to crew when people came to Mid-Ohio and they didn't have anyone, they would call down in Marietta and say, can you come up this weekend? So I crewed for Peter Gregg. I was a tire man there, proportion. And because Bill Mayberry helped me all the time at every race and in between prep and everything else, I helped him. He, with George Winterstein, they had Winterstein Smothers Racing, Formula 5000. I crewed a lot of those races. I crewed a lot of races for Murph after he left there. He went with Hogan Racing in Formula 5000 with David Hobbs driving. I crewed on those races. So when you start out as a Corvette enthusiast, you never know what's going to happen, and that's what happened to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Pretty interesting for, that car out there is the first 427 Corvette, period.
Did Unic anything do that engine?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
yeah.
How about Traco Engineering?
No, I don't know. Tommy will, he was here, he's still around. Tom McIntyre owns the car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Just trying to take a Doug.
Forget it's the guy's interviewing. He's on the program all the time. And what's your Where's the black guy? Where's the black guy on the program? Headlight squirts, they had to work. Did you see the headlight squirt? Uh-oh. It's not closing.
Yeah.
It won't close.
Good. Brake lights, good.
There's points. There's points. One won't close.
Turn lights on again, Kevin. Turn lights are on. Four ways are good.